Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this Tuesday of Holy Week. As you can see, it is Blue and White Day as a theme day from your suggestions. And today we are going to be working on some composite figures, finding both the surface area and the volume of those composite figures. So if you want to turn in your either physical textbook or online textbook, I am on page 690. Okay, page 690. So here are some big suggestions that I have for you guys during this video. I would always try and do the problem yourself before you watch me do it. Okay? Maybe not the first example or the second example, but I would always encourage you guys to try and do it yourself, because if you do it yourself, and you get it right after you watch me do it, then you probably have a pretty good basic understanding of this, okay? So let's go to example one. We have this composite figure, kind of looks like a Tetris piece, right? So when we look at our Tetris piece here, and I'm going to draw it out, give me just 1 second. And remember, I am not an artist. So we have this sort of image right here, right? Well, remember, what we can do is we can take our image and we can kind of cut it in half, can't we? We can take that image and we can cut it into two pieces. We'd have a rectangular prism and a cube, okay? And so I take those two and I have two three-dimensional shapes that I'm going to individually draw. And I have my two shapes, and one is a 16 by 8 by 6, and one is an 8 by 6 by 8. Okay? Now, what we need to do is we need to find the volume of these two prisms. Well, we remember that the volume formula is volume is length times width times height, right? Length times width times height. So what do? We're going to find the volume of 1 and then 2, and then we're going to add them together. Okay? So the first one, I have the volume, which would be 16 times 8 times 6, right? 16 times 8 times 6. The other one, I'd have volume is 8 times 6 times 8. Okay, volume is 8 times 6 times 8. Okay, now I'm going to solve those out. 8 times 6 times 16 is 768. The volume of 8 times 6 times 8 is 384. I add 768 plus 384, and I get 1,152 inches cubed. Okay? 1,152 inches cubed. So that's what I did for that problem. Okay. So, as we continue, we've got to see what we can do about number 2, where we don't have two composite cubes. Instead, we basically have a house, right, with a pyramid, a rectangular pyramid, and a cube on the bottom. Okay? Remember, we have to use our two volume formulas then. One's a pyramid, one's a rectangular prism. The prism will simply have length times width times height. The other one will have 1/3 big B times H, which is 1/3 times the area of the base times the height. So we plug in our numbers then, and we've got 8, 8, and 8, or 8 cubed. The other one will have 1/3 times 8 times 5. Excuse me, I made a little mistake. 8 times 5. And then we are going to multiply it by the height, which is also 5. We don't need that 6.4. Now, why don't we need that 6.4? Because that is the lateral height. Okay, that is the lateral height. All right. So, let's go ahead and multiply these out. 8 cubed is 512. 1/3 times 8 times 5 is a volume of 106.7. You add those up together and you get 618.7 feet cubed. Okay? So that's what we should have for number 2. Okay? All right. Let's see. If that's making sense, go on down to letter A, and we're going to do letter A by ourselves, okay? Now, that's a composite figure, and remember, the first thing we should do is we should divide it, okay? We should divide it. Now, here comes the really important thing. If you don't know how to divide this, watch me do it. If you think you got an idea of how you're going to divide this up, pause this video and then unpause it and follow along as I go. If you're not entirely sure how to do letter A, just follow along with me, okay? So go ahead and pause the video if you think you are ready to go for letter A on page 690. Okay, so for those of you who are just going to follow along with me, that's fine. I'm going to draw the image out on my whiteboard. And we have, let me do 1. This is 6 with 7, 12, 9, and 1. Okay. So we've got 2 legs on the table, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make 2 divisions, because I'm going to find the surface area, I'm going to find the volume of this prism, and this prism, okay? So I'm going to actually rewrite it and redraw it. I draw my 2 legs, and I'm actually going to not draw 2 legs because I don't need to. Because they're the same thing. All right, they're going to have the same measurements. Now, how do I know what my width is? Well, it's right here, and that's 1 centimeter. The length is going to be 6, and the height is going to be 7. Okay, it's going to be 7. Now, that just tells me I'm going to find a volume of length times width times height, and I'm going to plug in 7 times 6 times 1, which is 42 times 2, right? Because we have 2 of them. We have 2 legs on the table. 42 times 2 is 84. Okay? 84. So that's for the legs. Now comes the part, so I have one volume, which is 84, that I'm going to add to eventually. Now comes the other part where I have the volume of the tabletop, all right? And folks, I'm doing this live, okay? So if I mess up, you'll know why. And you could tell me, you could shout at the video and tell me that I'm doing it wrong, okay? So, on the table, we've got a length of 12, a width of 6, and then we have to know what the height is. Well, if we look on the side of the table, we see that the whole top side is 9. So that means if the leg is 7, we take 9 minus 7, which is 2. So this is our measurements. So we go volume equals 12 times 6 times 2. 6 times 2 is 12 times 12 is 144. So I get 144. Okay? So I'm going to do 144 plus 84. And would you look at that? I get my correct answer of 228 centimeters cubed. Now, here's a really important thing. No one's taken me up on this yet. If you are not sure, or you're looking at yourself, oh, Mr. Epi, I've rewinded this 7 times and I have no clue. Here's what you need to do. You need to send me a message, and then we'll set up a separate Zoom meeting that you and I can talk to each other. Okay? So if you're unsure about something, message me, and I'll set up a separate Zoom meeting. Okay? All right. So that's volume. All right? The volume of the composite figures. And so, let me look over here. And I'm going to put my video over here so that I can move this up. Now, we're going to work with surface area of composite figures. Oh, please be helpful. There you go. That's better. Okay. So if you look over on page 691, we have surface area of composite figure by finding the areas of the faces that make up the composite figure. So we have example 3 with 2 composite figures where we have we have this sort of shape, and we're gonna cut it in half and try to find the area of this rectangle and the area of this rectangle, the surface area. Okay. So we are going to go area is length times width, which is 6. Area is length times width, which is area for the first one is 16 times 6, which gets us 96. And then we're going to find the area of the small one, which is length times width, which gets us 6 times 8, which gets us 48. So that's, when you look over on page 691, that's how you solve the first 2 parts. Now, what the heck are those? Well, if you remember, if we go back to our formula for surface area, we see that we have a longer formula for prisms, right? So we have to go back to our surface area formula. So if we look on if you go back to your surface area formula and look at page 691 with me, to find the surface area of the larger, so these are our 2 for the side parts. But if we look at the large base, okay? So far, we've found one side, and we've found one side. Now we need to find the sides that smush them together, okay? And so that will be length, the area, which is length times width, plus length times width, okay? And that's, again, 8 times 16 plus 8 times 8, okay? We get that. We get 128 plus 64, which equals 192. So far, I have an area which is 192, I have an area which is 96, and I have an area which is 48. And you would say, oh, just add those up, right? Well, not entirely. We have to add some things together first. First, we're going to do the 192. That is the top and the bottom of the image, okay? So I'm going to use this little box as an example. So we found one of these, but we have to find 2 of them, right? So we start with the surface area being 192 times 2, okay? But we're going to add that, because then we found this side, but we have to find its opposite side, okay? which is 96 times 2. And then we're going to add our 48. Now, you would say to yourself, oh, we'll just multiply 48 times 2 also. No. Here's the problem. You have this attachment out here, which has 4 more sides that we need to find. So that means we'll multiply the 48 times 4. Okay? So we go and we multiply and we add all those up, and we end up with a surface area of 768 inches squared. Make sure that's in the camera. Okay. Okay. Alrighty. Let's go and look at number 4 then. Alright. So, the following is made up of the surface area of 2 different polygons. And we have a square, which is 8 by 8, and we have a triangle, which is 6.4 feet by 8 feet. Okay? We have to find the areas of those 2, and then we have to determine what are we going to multiply it by. Okay? Now, let's imagine what type of 3-dimensional figure does a square make up of? Well, it makes up a cube, right? So this would make up a cube. So we know that this would be the 3-dimensional shape that this makes up is a cube. And then, of course, we know that the 3-dimensional shape that the other one makes up is a rectangular pyramid, right? So then we have to figure out what are we going to do with the surface area of these 2 things. Well, what we need to do is we need to figure out how many faces do we have to find, okay? Well, for this, the cube, how many faces are on a cube? There's 6, but how many do we need to know? We actually only need to know 5, because the top one is being covered by the pyramid, okay? You see how that works? Top one's being covered by the pyramid. How many faces are on the pyramid? There's 5. How many do we have to know? Just 4, because the bottom, the base, is being covered up by the being on top of the cube. Okay, so the area of the cube is length times width. The area of the triangle is 1/2 base times height. Area equals 8 times 8. Area equals 1/2, which is 6.4 times 8. Okay, so these should be your 2 formulas. You solve that out. We have area equals 64. Area equals 25.6. We're going to multiply 64 by how many sides? We're going to multiply by 5 sides. Multiply it by 5. We're going to multiply 25.6 by how many sides? We're going to multiply it by 4 sides. Okay? Multiply those 2 by the correct sides, and we end up with, when we add those up, we end up with 422.4 feet squared. 422.4 feet squared. Okay? All right. So if you go on and you look at your assignment, which will be due by Thursday, please, I want you to go ahead and do all of page 693, but I'm going to give you a skip. Okay? So page 693, but you can skip. Okay? Page 693, numbers 1 through 8, skip 1. Okay? Page 693, numbers 1 through 8, skip 1. And I encourage you guys, if you are confused about something, message me and we'll set up a short Zoom conference that we can go through a problem together, okay? Here is the one thing I want you to do before you start working on this. On Google Classroom, just to make sure I know that you watched and listened to my video, I want you to answer this question for me. Would you, if you could pick a superpower, would you rather be invisible, be able to fly, or be able to have super strength? Invisible, fly, super strength. Okay? If you want one of those three, comment below in the video. Have a great Tuesday, guys. Bye-bye.